Hey love, how are you? It's been a minute, I know. I am so glad I get to sit down today and just have a moment to chat with you a little bit. I want to talk about self-sabotage because this is something that comes up a lot where the people around me will mention casually that they lean towards self-sabotage, and like most buzzwords, I think the subjectiveness of it makes it very difficult to understand what someone means when they use the word. So I figured I'd get myself to understand what self sabotage is all about and maybe see if it applies to me. And it was a very interesting dive because I learned some very interesting things basically. So, welcome to another episode of Between Me and the Ink. If you're new here, my name is Faye and thank you for stopping by. So, the basic definition of self-sabotage is any behavior that holds you back from living your best life. So basically anything that undermines your success, happiness, or well-being, or creates problems in your daily life, or interferes with your goals and objectives. It's important to realize that self-sabotage is not just about the things that you do. It can also be about the things that you do not do. Because sometimes inaction fucks you up more than action would. Also, I would like to preface this episode by saying that buzzwords are subjective. The meaning that I might get out of something like self-sabotage or procrastination or even projection might be different based on your experience of the same things. So you have to do the work and figure out what these things mean to you based on your experiences and your specific situations, yeah? There are things that can qualify as self-sabotage depending on the context. Like, for me, procrastination is self-sabotage because it leaves me with higher stress levels and a very low productivity level because I don't work well under stress. I prefer to take my time when I'm doing stuff. So doing things on time or early is always better for me. Also, I feel like I do things better, like my productivity is higher when I have the time, I'm not rushing and I'm not stressed out. So whenever I procrastinate and end up doing things closer to the deadline, I'm basically fucking myself up. If you work better under stress, or if you're more of someone that relies on missing a deadline so that you can be pressed to do something, I don't think procrastination would be self-sabotage for you because you work better in those contexts. I don't know if we can say negative self-talk is also subjective, but for most people, having a negative self-talk will put you in a self-defeating mindset where your confidence is very low. You don't trust yourself to do the stuff that you want to do. But I've also heard about people who are really tough on themselves and they get themselves to push harder. I still think it's unhealthy to talk to yourself like that, but also if that is what works for you, I don't think it can qualify as self-sabotage. But for the rest of us who are sensitive to being talked to like that, if I start calling myself a wimp, that's self-destructive, right? Fear of success can also be self-sabotage. Like if you are so terrified of things getting so good, maybe because of how much more work you'll have to put in, or for whatever reason there is, as long as you're afraid of succeeding. Usually this is about not wanting to step outside your comfort zone, and that means you're going to be limiting your potential so that you can stay within your comfort zone basically, and that is not a good thing. If you're experiencing self-doubt and questioning your worthiness, whether it's for a good relationship or a successful career or just any kind of joy that you might have a chance to experience, that can also qualify as self-sabotage. Indecision. This is a big one because there are so many underlying causes. But if you tend to experience analysis paralysis and you don't do anything to get yourself out of it, Yeah, that for me is definitely self-sabotage, because there are tools you can use to get out of that situation. And when you choose not to, whether consciously or subconsciously, you are fucking yourself up. Perfectionism can also be self-sabotage, and I know that this is deeply rooted in childhood experiences, because you need to be perfect or you don't matter. Whatever variation of that applies to you, you'll find that any situation where there's a risk of failing, you're not willing to engage. And I get wanting to feel safe and protect yourself, but you can go overboard with perfectionism. Anyway, I'd like to dip my toe into understanding the why of self-sabotage. And the first one, as earlier mentioned, it's childhood experiences, especially if you were told that you won't amount to anything. And we were all joking about that. Mwalimu wa maths telling you hautaenda mbali, and to be honest, those things did something to us. Yeah, having a person in authority discounting your worth at a very young age, it's terrible. Yeah. So if someone told you you won't amount to anything or hautaenda mbali, to be honest, that can leave you with that background voice of you're not worth that much, you can't do it, you can't make it. Also, if your parents or guardian only paid attention to you when you fucked up, you'll find that fucking up is your go-to. Like, that becomes how you see yourself, because that is the only time that you felt seen. And it's shitty. Like, it really is. Sometimes you also self-sabotage because you genuinely just feel like you're not good enough. And this can have many causes. Like, maybe you did something that made you question your worth, or someone else did something that made you question your worth, or maybe life hasn't been so kind to you lately and you feel like maybe you did something to deserve it. Like, there are so many contexts where we feel like we're not good enough, and that can lead to self-sabotage. If you've not been expecting much from life based on either your past experiences or the experiences of those around you, and this is a basis for a lot of mentorship programs where, like, kids who have difficult family situations are exposed to people who have a different life experience, like away from their parents and guardians and families generally. You need to see that life can be good, and it can be really good for you to actually even try to make your life that good, you know? Like, there's a time for me the norm was struggle, and I could not see myself living outside of the struggle. Getting to see that you can get more, that there is more to actually strive for, that makes a difference. And unfortunately, I think if you spend so much time not expecting anything from life, not expecting life to get better, it gets really hard to convince you that things can be different, to the point that even when things are different, even when your life is getting better, you don't trust it and you end up self-sabotaging. Another reason is a cognitive dissonance, where there's inconsistency between your beliefs and your actions. A common example of this is when you don't believe in love, like you've never seen a happy couple. Like, maybe your parents are together, they've been together your entire life and they're not happy. So when you are trying to get into a relationship, you genuinely don't expect to be happy. You're just doing it because it's what you're supposed to do. And in that situation, when you experience happiness, you're likely to sabotage it, because what the fuck is that, you know? Another reason is that you might have a crippling need for control. And unfortunately, life is very uncontrollable for the most part. So when you feel like things are getting out of hand, you decide to yank the rug from under your own feet, and it might feel inescapable, but there are ways you can stop self-sabotaging for sure. But before we go there, let's talk about patterns to watch out for, because people don't always know that they're self-sabotaging, do they? A lot of instances where you self-sabotage, you'll find that it's an unconscious thing, and you need to be very present with yourself for you to figure it out. So here are some patterns to watch out for. 1, if you're always blaming others for your problems, that might be a sign. Like, yeah, there are many situations where someone actually fucks up, like your problems have been caused by someone else's actions or inaction. I get that. But also there are instances where no one is to blame, like bad things just happen. But if in the way you process your pain, there always has to be someone who is at fault, that might need your attention. 2, if you have a tendency of walking away from difficult situations without really trying to fix it. This is like when you have I don't know whether to call it a self-defeatist mentality, but there are people who genuinely constantly feel helpless. And we could talk about learned helplessness that comes from your childhood experiences and never being trusted to do stuff or to fix your own shit. But I think, especially as an adult, knowing that you have the capacity to fix a situation is very important. And if you realize that you never try to fix any difficult situations, for you it's always helplessness and resignation, basically. Yeah, that is also something to look out for. Number 3, if you're always feeling overwhelmed by what you need to do, even if you've done it before, that signifies a self-trust problem, which could also tie into self-sabotage. Number 4, if you find yourself picking fights, could be with your friends, your partner, your family, basically if you're constantly just creating problems. Number 5, if you get into the same kind of relationships that end badly for you, if you keep wondering why don't you ever learn your lesson, why are you always finding yourself in that situation, yeah, that is definitely self-sabotage. And the last one, if you put yourself down a lot and you give yourself no grace when you fuck up. Yeah, so notes on how to stop self-sabotage. First, I want to say it's not an easy fix. Like for most personal development goals, it's not easy to deal with it. But step number 1 is that you have to cultivate self-awareness. You need to understand your patterns and what drives you and how you feel in most situations, because we are very emotional beings. I'd say all of our decisions are emotional, by the way. So getting to a point where you understand your emotions, you are aware of what you're feeling at every given time, that helps. Number 2 is understanding your root causes, because there are so many potential causes of self-sabotage, and I've mentioned a few. That list was not extensive. You need to figure out your experiences and what has caused you to self-sabotage. Yeah. Once you understand the root causes, you have to start challenging your negative beliefs and practice self-compassion. If you maybe your belief is that you never do anything right, you challenge it by thinking about all the times that you've done things right. Like maybe you passed your last exam, or maybe you took yourself to the hospital when you were not feeling okay, or maybe you made yourself a healthy meal instead of eating junk all the time. Like there are so many times where you'll have proven yourself wrong, like when you've shown that you can do the right thing. On practicing self-compassion, I think just being willing to see beyond your mistakes, maybe understanding that you did your best in that situation. I think self-compassion is a whole different conversation, but basically you need to be able to love yourself even when you fucked up. Number 4 is to set and track realistic goals. And by realistic goals, I mean goals that mean something to you and that are within your scope. For example, if If your goal is to lose 20 kgs in, let's say, 6 months, that's more realistic than someone who wants to lose 20 kgs in a month, right? Because when you give yourself enough time to accomplish a difficult goal, it means you understand how much work it's going to take, and you're allowing yourself the grace to go as fast or as slow as you need to and still get to where you're going, right? Tip number 5 is to celebrate your victories no matter how small, because that's what will keep you motivated. You also need to seek support, because for the most part, you can't do these things alone. Like, you need someone to hold you accountable and to hold your hand when you need the extra help. And you will need the extra help for sure. Also, you need to practice self-care to cultivate a culture of rooting for yourself instead of always expecting yourself to fail. And a big part of self-sabotaging involves expecting yourself to fail. So to counter that, self-care tells your brain that you love yourself, you know. It's a way to manifest self-love. And once you get to a point where you trust that you love yourself, it becomes easier to trust that you're not going to always fail. Like, when you love someone, you trust that they'll figure shit out. You know, even when things are going really, really bad, you trust them, you believe in them. And imagine being able to give that to yourself, right? Another tip is to practice mindfulness. And you do this by always asking if your behavior is aligning with your goals. Sometimes people really act out of pocket, and if it happens once in a while, that's allowed, like, we're human. But if you're constantly doing things that are not aligning with who you are or who you want to be or what you want to achieve, that becomes very troubling, because at the end of the day, you won't be who you are or who you want to be. You'll be this person who acts in a way that is different from what you actually want to act like. And that can suck, but also it's within your power. Like, you are in charge of your behavior by being in charge of your emotions. And I'm not saying that you should deny your emotions. I'm just saying that if you own it, if you are present enough to own it, to know what you're feeling, you can actually determine how you respond to those emotions instead of acting out and doing things that do not reflect who you are or who you want to be. The last tip is to get comfortable with failure and uncertainty, because self-sabotage is mostly about running away from failure. Like, either you're saying, you know, if I give up, then I won't have failed because, you know, I didn't try. Or like, you're trying to run away from what you believe is inevitable because you don't trust yourself to have a positive outcome. But if you're comfortable with the negative outcomes, I don't think you'll go through this whole dance of fucking up before life fucks you up. But I know that that's oversimplified. Get comfortable with failing. Get comfortable with not knowing. Get comfortable with living in the moment and taking it all in stride. Because at the end of the day, control is an illusion. Like, we just do our best and hope for the best all the time. And when the best doesn't come, we feel shitty. We kick ourselves for a bit. But then we get back up. We still have the option to try again and try again for as long as it takes until we get what we want. If you're still here, as always, thank you so much for sticking around. It's kind of crazy how much bad shit has been happening in this country, but at the end of the day, we are grateful for still being here. I hope you're keeping well and you're finding ways to protect yourself and to keep moving forward, because life is hard, man. Life is so hard right now. Meanwhile, I am sending you all my love, and I hope you have a less turbulent week. Okay? Bye.